Welcome to Oncology Revolution, where science meets care to transform the cancer journey. We explore evidence-based strategies to enhance quality of life, promote longevity, and empower patients and professionals to thrive beyond cancer.
Let's start today's conversation. I hate to say, so if you don't mind, do say your name because I am almost scared of saying your last name and screwing it up.
Yeah, I'm already used to that. My name is Dana Zhaxylykova.
Zhaxylykova. Okay.
Yeah.
And you have quite an impressive curriculum. You started by being part of a Bachelor of Engineering in Civil and Environmental Engineering. Then you went on to the Master of Environmental Science. And you're currently, yet again, a student, correct?
Yeah.
In the Master of Environmental Contamination and Toxicology.
Yeah, that's right.
And while you are doing that through also Erasmus with different countries, correct?
Mhm.
And you're also creating um, a how to say a research on the microplastics, which is a little bit of what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, that's right.
Would you like to say a little bit more about yourself and how you went about into entering this world of this problem that we have right now in our society?
Yeah. If we go back to my background, my family's from the RLC. It's the region in Kazakhstan where a huge environmental disaster took place in the 60s. So because of human mismanagement, we lost 90% of our lake. It was once one of the largest lakes in the world, but right now we only have 10% of it. And my grandfather, he spent all of his life, and he's still working to trying to maintain at least the levels that we have left of the RLC right now. And I think it was a big inspiration for me in the beginning to be basically interested in the world of environmental science and environmental conservation. And I really wanted to, contribute to that as well. And that's why I wanted to do my bachelor's in civil and environmental engineering. Of course, the emphasis was more on the civil engineering, but I still I really liked the environmental science courses and environmental engineering courses. And and I joined my professor in environmental chemistry with his research. And after some time working with him, he suggested me to start my own research, and he suggested to start researching microplastics because no one ever did that before in Kazakhstan. And in the whole Central Asia, we never had any research on microplastics going on. And he suggested me, and I was a bit skeptical because I didn't know much about microplastics. Of course, I heard about it, but first at that time, it wasn't that popular. And also, we never, like, the big topics are always like climate change and pollution, but never microplastics, at least at that time. But I started reading about microplastics, and I was so fascinated. I was shocked, honestly, about everything that I learned about microplastics, like how they are everywhere, like absolutely everywhere. And also the fact that the topic is very understudied. It's basically a very new topic in science. It's about 15, maybe 20 years old, which in terms of science is very new. It's very young field. And another thing, it's the lack of proper regulations. So just an example. I'm sorry if the introduction is very long. It's just so many things to add. But yeah, this is going to be last. About the regulations. Because I did my research on wastewater, and I had my results on how many microplastics we discharge directly into our water body in my city, in Astana. And I was very curious, is it a big number or is it a very small number? Is it within the limits and stuff like this? I was just curious to compare, like, yeah, I have this result, but what does that really mean? And I was trying to find any regulations. There are no regulations in Kazakhstan, but I was thinking maybe I could find something like from European Union, from US, or any other developed countries. And literally nothing. There is no regulation about this in any country in the world. Like either you discharge like 2, 3 microplastics per day, or you discharge literally trillions of microplastics per day. It's not regulated. It's not monitored anywhere. And I think that was one of the reasons like really sparked my interest, and I really wanted to contribute it to that topic. So I decided to to do my master's in environmental contamination and toxicology, and currently I'm doing my research on microplastics in Germany in the research center, and I really hope in future to contribute to these policies and regulations. Yeah, that's it.
Well, you know what? The first thing I have to say is that I love your enthusiasm. I mean, it's pretty easy to see that you enjoy what you are doing and what you're learning. So that's very important. So the first question, and I believe I'm bringing that up first mainly because that's what everyone hears about. I mean, we hear about all the plastic that is in our oceans. Um, so, but we don't realize, exactly, how much of it is there in the oceans and how big of a problem it is. I mean, so can you develop a little bit on such, in terms of, how bad is the situation right now in our oceans?
So just for your perspective, there is this estimate that I think by 2030 we'll have more microplastics in the ocean than any fish or any um, aquatic life
Mhm.
there is, and I think it's quite concerning. Of course, we also have this very infamous plastic islands in the oceans that is 5 times bigger than France, and all of this news about plastic and plastic pollution. It's really, really devastating. I know sometimes it can be overlooked, but maybe in the recent year it gained more popularity. But it was overlooked how plastic is everywhere as well, how microplastics is everywhere. Currently, we're finding microplastics concentration not only in the water, but there's a huge abundance in water, but we're already finding it in our atmosphere, in our air, in our clouds, and in even very, very, very distant, more or less pristine areas of our world. We still find microplastics even there, and nanoplastic is also another huge topic that
Sure.
that also very concerning. And nanoplastics are even more abundant than microplastics, and there's um, also a lot of difficulties with microplastic and nanoplastics. So there's still a lot of things that we also don't know about them. First, because the science itself is very young. Another thing, it's a lot of difficulties with microplastic because we also have very different types of plastics, like polymer types, like we have polyethylene, polystyrene, and there's a lot more microplastics and plastic types. Another thing is the regulation. Again, there's lack of regulation. We have some here and there, but it's still not enough, and we still have a lot of work to do. And how plastic already penetrated everything, absolutely every area, every aspect of our lives, starting from like fashion, and ending with like skincare, personal care products, because we also have um, a lot of brands that put intentionally microplastics as an ingredient. Um, yeah, so I don't want to be very, negative about this topic. Um, it's I just want to share the knowledge. It's important to know what we have in our, daily objects, and in general what's happening with the environmental science in the world. But it's not for you to be afraid to freak out about everything. It's just for you to have reasons why we need to fight for these regulations and policies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, number one are the regulations and the policies. But, unfortunately, until that happens, I mean, we are ending up with both micro and nanoplastics in our bodies. So explain a little bit, how do they end up in our bodies? I mean, you talked about, like, for example, the cosmetics, the creams and whatnot, but the fish, I'm sure that's one of the biggest parts. I mean, nowadays, I'm sure that we cannot even buy any more fish that does not have some micro or nanoplastics. So, I mean, just give us some ideas on how our bodies are already, having all of those plastics, and how, what is the outcome of such in our own bodies as well.
Mhm. So for the people, not probably not for you because you already know, we have three main routes on how something can enter. This is inhalation, ingestion, and dermal contact, and microplastic checks all 3 points because it can enter our bodies through three of this. As I said, we have it already in our air, um, both inside of our homes and outside in the nature in the cities. So we inhale it, of course, and it gets down to our lungs. Second is dermal contact because, as I said again, our clothes are already more than half of our clothes are produced with synthetic fibers nowadays. So yeah, it's another huge source of microplastic, as well as personal care products that we have microplastics intentionally added to these products. And again, most of products, personal care products, they have microplastics. Even your toothpaste. I actually learned it quite recently about the microplastics in toothpaste because I know they put it in like skincare and makeup, but I never checked my toothpaste, and apparently they put them there as well, and it was quite shocking. And yeah, we already have plastic toothbrush that releases a lot of microplastic, and now we also have microplastic in toothpaste. But yeah, that's crazy. And third, a huge part is, of course, through ingestion, we already have microplastics in water, microplastics. We package our food with plastic packaging. So whenever you go to your grocery store, you always have these fruits, vegetables in, sometimes even single fruit can be packaged in plastic, as well as fish, as you said. Uh, Fish, they live in the ocean that we pollute with plastic, and they are not capable of distinguishing between microplastics and food, so they tend to accumulate a lot of microplastics, and then we eat fish with whatever amount of microplastic it has. And yeah, we have a lot of. And another huge source that I learned quite recently about as well, because there was a recent research about tea bags that are releasing microplastics, because a lot of tea bags, they are either, have this synthetic bag, or even those that are like compostable or papery ones, they sometimes, quite often, may have a lining of plastic to make it stick to each other. And this, like one single tea bag, can release up to 11 billions of nanoplastic, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a huge amount. And yeah, there's microplastic and plastic, they're already infiltrating almost everything. So yeah, we have it from all of the routes.
Yeah, it's scary. And I mean, there are some researches already, studies, I guess, that show that we ingest on a weekly basis almost the same amount as a credit card. Is it true?
Um, it's hard for me to comment on that because I read about that paper, and I also read about people disproving this paper, saying that it's not 100% reliable. And I think it's also very different from person to person and from culture to culture, because we have all different habits, and it can be really different. For some people it may be less, for some people it may be much more. So I think it's very dangerous to generalize, at least for microplastics concentration in your consumption.
Right. And so once we ingest, whether it is through food or, as you said, the air, or whatnot, what happens to these all of those particles going into our body, and where do they end up storing themselves?
hmm So when it comes to inhalation, and I would say for injection it's the same, and for dermal contact, it's all about the size. So if it's very small, because the microplastics can be different size, and I think it's the factor of 100, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe 1,000. And it all depends on the size. If the size is very small, it can easily penetrate and stay in your organs, in your blood for a long time. But for bigger microplastics particles, if it's ingestion, then it goes out naturally, flushes away in your toilet. But of course, there's also an instance of smaller microplastics. So when you ingest, uh, so your gut will try to absorb different vitamins, right, from and nutrients from your food, and And during this process, microplastic can sneak and also go into this absorption together with the vitamins and nutrients. And then they are introduced into our blood. And there's also a very recent research that found out that microplastics can intersect or enter the blood-brain barrier. So this barrier that should protect your brain from different chemicals and different toxins, and microplastics can go through that barrier. And they already found a big concentration of microplastics in our brains. And I even memorized the number because it was uh, shocking for me. It was 0.5% of our brains are already filled with microplastics.
A big amount when you think about it. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
how does that? So I'm sure that that will trigger inflammation or even change or damage our DNA. I mean, do we already have enough research on that or not yet?
I would say we don't have much data to say like specifically this is the microplastics effect and this is going to damage our DNA. Uh, so yeah, we still have a lot more work to do in the research to understand whether the like
Effects on
results
our
of
body.
microplastics. And another thing is again, as I said, is like a plastic is such a huge range of different polymer types, and they all will have different effects. And also another thing about microplastics that is quite interesting is the ability of it to absorb different chemicals on the surface of it. So if they so plastic is considered as inert, meaning that it's not easily reacting with our body, and that's why it's not breaking down very easily in nature, and it should be more or less safe for our health, right? But there's this very bad trait of microplastics to absorb different chemicals on its surface, and this cocktail of chemicals that we call it can be very, very different, and you cannot always predict how microplastics with a different set of chemicals are gonna react or what kind of effect it's gonna have on your specific body. So that's another very big difficulty of microplastics is the cocktail of chemicals that you cannot predict. Yeah.
Yeah. So what about also, I mean, you were talking about, of course, all the different chemical effects on the plastic, but for example, also the chemical additives in plastics like BPA, which now, thankfully, so there are already some rules about avoiding putting a BPA on plastic. But I mean, there's other ones also that supposedly, I mean, there is already research that does disrupt, our endocrine, correct? So that is also something. Can you explain a little bit how that will affect our hormone regulation and what are the risks, that of the types of diseases that we could have from that?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great area of microplastics topic. I think everyone already talks about how microplastics and plastic they can uh, affect your hormones and endocrine systems. And it's true that again, we treat plastic with a lot of different chemicals, and yeah, usually some uh, have BPA. We also have PFAS that is currently trending in science fields as well. On how we find that PFAS is also a very big endocrine disruptor, and how it can have a bad impact on your health. Also, we have flame retardants and all of these other chemicals that we put into our plastic that we then ingest or we put on our skin or any other route. And so when we go back to endocrine disruptions, uh, yeah, it will still have all these chemicals. Maybe the plastic itself will not do any effect, but the chemicals on it, they were already proved that some of them can be disrupting our hormones. And when it comes to, for example, the female health, it's not studied so good as we know. And when it comes to microplastics, it is not an exception. But we already, like quite Literally today or yesterday, I encountered a paper that said that we already have microplastics in some of our I forgot the name of woman special, like ovary, I think. Ovary? Yeah, like this, they found microplastics in ovary. We also have microplastics in placenta. And when it comes to men's health, it's microplastics in testes, and there's for now it's quite not very strong, but there's a link between fertilization
Yes.
and
And
microplastics. How if you
that's
have
what I was about-
yeah,
exactly. I was
if you
going
have
to ask you
lots
that,
of
but I'm sure.
microplastics,
Yes.
yeah,
But I'm sure that, I mean, as a woman gets pregnant and the fetus is starting to absorb it, so from the moment that, it's still inside the mom's womb, plus even afterwards, perhaps with breastfeeding.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, sometimes when I talk about the reproductive health and microplastics, I always like to tell this, but it's how we found microplastics in placenta. So babies are exposed to microplastics even before being born, and it's quite alarming at this rate, I would say. Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's a nice breaker for me.
But, I mean, I'm sure that, I mean, in terms of that, I mean, you will have a whole career of even more studying happening because, as you said, I mean, this is just a situation that's just 20 years old in in the studies. So, I mean, it's still a very young field to study.
Exactly.
What about, I mean, now entering the cancer world? I mean, what do we know in terms of the connection of plastic perhaps being a silent carcinogen? I mean, how much do we know of it? Um, Again, I mean, we already talked a little bit about, the hormone regulations. So, what do we know in terms of the cancer connection with plastic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's one of the most asked questions is about cancer and microplastics, and I would say it's a tough question because again, more research is needed to be done. Um, we have some papers that have found some link between cancer development and microplastics, but still it's not definitive yet. We still need to spend more time and more efforts into research to finally have a definitive answer and definitive conclusion towards that. So yeah, we still need more research to understand properly the relationship between cancer and microplastics. But again, as I said about the all this cocktail of chemicals on microplastics, so as I said, it's going to be very different for each set of chemicals, and some may contribute to cancer development, but some may not. So yeah.
Do we know already within the cancer what type of cancers these may contribute more to, such as whether it is prostate or breast cancer or I mean any other type of cancer? I mean, do we already know if there are any correlations between certain types of cancer or not yet?
I know one, which is lung cancer. I think this is more or less more researched compared to other. Yeah. So
Here right now asking a very good question, which you already brought up a little bit, which is if there are any regulations in the plans, for our health and safety concerns.
there's actually emerging like a set of regulation in European Union that I know about. Under they're doing this under REACH, which is the name of the regulatory body in European Union, and they're planning to have more regulations towards plastic production and intentional usage of microplastics. They already banned all plastic glitters, I think, last year, and in the span of 15 or 20 years, they will also have have regulations about microplastics put intentionally into our personal care products. So they will not allow it anymore in the coming, as I said, 15 years. I think that's mainly it. In US, they also started this regulation on microbeads, that they also are trying to restrict the amount of microplastics intentionally put into skincare. But that's about it. I think we also have this plastic treaty in the development, but I'm not sure about the time frames.
Okay. So, I mean, going back again to cancer, I mean, beyond cancer, I mean, what are other things that we may know? I mean, you already talked about, the blood and brain barrier. But are there any other, for example, diseases such as neurological diseases such as Alzheimer's? I mean, are there any studies already that are showing that due to all the plastic that we are um receding through our body, in the different areas that you talked about, are there any other studies that show anything in terms of that or?
Yeah, for sure. There are already numerous research about that when it comes to human health. I think about the brain, it's a good question actually, because in that research that they found the microplastic concentration in our brain, they also found a relationship between people diagnosed with dementia and the concentration of microplastics, meaning the more people that were diagnosed with dementia had higher concentration of microplastics in their brain. But they didn't say that they still don't know if the cause of dementia was the microplastics, or microplastics were accumulated because of dementia, and they had, because of dementia, they had uh, less strong barrier of the brain. So it's not yet established, but I think it's still very interesting and very concerning finding. Apart from that, we also have, since we
Hello, hello. I think I lost you there for a second. Cannot hear you. Can you hear me? Okay, now, oops. Okay, good.
yeah. What I was saying, yeah, about the inhalation, because they also found out that we have microplastics in air, in nanoplastics. We might have some lung problems because of microplastics, starting from something mild like just irritation in our lungs, so coughing and stuff like this, to something more serious like asthma, or, as I said, lung cancer. But yeah, still we need more research. But these are some of the preliminary results. Another very interesting experiment that I read about was with rats, and I don't remember the specifics, but what I remembered, the finding is that those rats that had more microplastics concentration or microplastics exposure, they had um, less serotonin, how to- like, processed. And I think it's very interesting finding, not necessarily meaning that in humans it will be the same, but still quite concerning and, yeah, interesting.
Word. So, and what about our guts and, our microbiome? I mean, that will also be affected by the plastics, correct? That we are inhaling.
You mean like in the nature, or the
Yeah, I
atmosphere?
mean, whatever types of, whatever ways that we are end up ingesting the plastics, the microplastics and nanoplastics, how does that affect our gut? And I mean, part of the inflammation. And I mean, do we have any studies yet that really does show that it will, or actually the inflammation it reacts due to it?
I know that there were already several research that found that whenever microplastics enters your body, especially the blood, uh, immune system starts to affect on that, and it's it sees microplastics as something bad, of course, and we have inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
um, and for example, if microplastics is very, very small and it's small enough, it can be transported through cells. And in cells, it can cause oxidative stress and even apoptosis, which I think is the preliminary thing for cancer, right? If I'm if I'm right.
Yes, one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we have, I mean, the thing about these, we already talked about the pregnancy and the fetus, whatnot. I mean, those that are the most vulnerable people are actually the children and people that are pregnant, correct? I would imagine so.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Uh, I think that's true almost for everything, but in the case of microplastics as well. And another very interesting. I'm sorry that I call everything just, but I had this question in my head for a long, long time about silicon, because plastic, again, it's such a huge range of things, and we still didn't give a proper definition to what is plastic and what is not. Because, for example, here, someone said like plastic is made from fossil fuels, but it's not always made from fossil fuels. So it can be very different. Even we have natural plastic like rubber. And with silicon is also very confusing, because when you think of silicon, you start to think of silica, which is the uh, just sand that you find in periodic table, and you don't think of it as plastic. And I was very confused because it looks and it feels like plastic when we talk about like silicon uh, stuff that we have in the kitchen, for example. But at the same time, silicon is like the sand, so it's quite confusing. So I couldn't understand if microplastics can shed microplastics or not, because I like silicon is considered more or less plastic, but does it shed microplastics? And I was discussing it with my chemistry supervisor right now, and I also consulted a lot of papers to understand about silicon. And whenever you try to Google if silicon shed microplastics, and if you try to Google it right now, you will have this answer like, no, silicon does not shed microplastics. Yes, it's technically a plastic, but it's so different because it's very durable, so it will never shed any microplastics. But when I checked the literature, um, I found out that silicon can shed microplastics. It was not a very good finding, but at least now I have it result in my mind, in my head. And there's a very little amount of research done on that. I literally found like 4 or 5 papers. And in that papers, they usually did research on silicone stuff that we use in kitchen, like, the silicate spatulas or something like that. And a lot of them also focused, like most of them were focused on silicone, like silicone teats, and that they put on the bottle, baby bottle, and silicone pacifiers.
Oh, and I mean, related to cancer, there's also the silicone breast implants that women go through after mastectomy.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But I couldn't find any papers on that. Uh, and it's indeed we use a lot of silicone when it comes to baby products. So every baby cutlery is usually silicone, and they try to just use baby teeth to estimate the amount of microplastics babies are exposed to just from these teeth. And it was found out that one baby can be exposed to 500 million microplastics by the age of 1 year. Just from the teeth, not from anything else. And and it was
So, I mean, when you start thinking about, I mean, all of that, and I mean, we cannot avoid it, unfortunately. I mean, in nowadays world, we cannot avoid it. So, what can we do? I mean, any person at home, at work, I mean, walking around, what are things that we can do to better our health in a way? I mean, what are the realistic steps that we could take so that we can reduce the exposure?
Mhm. Yeah, another thing I like about microplastics is that you can actually make a difference. When it comes to climate change, it's really hard, I would say. But when it comes to microplastics, it's more or less doable, because it concerns your daily life and daily routine. And making even one swap can result in literally billions and trillions of microplastics saved from your body and from the environment. So some of the so I usually highlight three areas where you can do changes. So first is of course kitchen. It should be your priority to try to swap all the plastic utensils, cutlery, chopping boards is a big one, from plastic to something else. So for example, when you have plastic chopping board, you can literally see the plastics when you cut on it. And yeah, you can easily make a switch to something like wooden or bamboo or metal or glass, for example. And the same is cutlery. And it will result is in such a huge amount of microplastics saved. Yeah, also plastic water bottles, another big area, big source. So switching to, for example, glass, reusable bottle or stainless steel reusable bottle is a good option. And it also saves you money and saves the environment, which is like all the advantages from different sides. So this is about kitchen. Of course, packaging, you also should be careful. Sometimes it can be quite unavoidable because you don't have the options in the store, but at least when you come home, take them out of the bag. Yeah, another area is your bathroom. It's second of priority, I would say, because also another great among microplastics. Oral health care, it's is the biggest when it comes to personal care because we have this bamboo toothbrush, so you just literally wrap plastic into your mouth, and the same with toothpaste. So if possible, finding some more sustainable and plastic-free solutions. I don't know, bamboo toothbrush or toothpaste that comes in tablets. They usually don't have microplastics. And the same with the skincare. Yeah, there is this great app, Beat the Microbeat, that you can use to scan the products. And also there is another side project of mine that I'm doing with one of my friends. We also want to create an app that you can scan literally anything and it will tell the um, microplastics risk score. Oh yeah, yeah. This is something I'm working on. I hope it will be ready. I don't know, this summer, and everyone can try it. Yeah, that's
Amazing. That and it's very helpful because it will make it much easier, especially for the younger generations that are already very app oriented to be able to start taking care of themselves. So that would be a fantastic tool to have for sure. And someone was actually here talking. Go ahead. Go. Sorry. Yes,
to
yes.
finish with stick area, which is closet. So all your clothes, if they're made of synthetic, maybe you can slowly switch one by one to natural fabrics as well as bed sheets. Now I have 100% organic cotton bed sheets, and it was like one of the best decisions of my life because it feels so much better on your skin and also microplastics free, which is good. Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
But it does help also the environment in general anyway, correct?
exactly.
Someone was talking about, what can we do as consumers? I'm sure that, we have the voice, correct? So what can we do as consumers, like, for example, especially with health beauty products, to get in touch with the companies so that they start making changes? And as we talking about the health, and, makeup or cream color, I believe with any type of company, what can we do as consumers?
Um, of course, yeah, there's lots of different options that we can do for different people. Some may just avoid some things or make your skincare as simple as possible so you will have less consumption overall and less exposure to microplastics overall, and you vote with your dollar to show that um you value my plastic free products rather than plastic products. This is one of the ways. Another way, which is also a great way, is trying to contact the brands and actively show them that you that you're concerned about microplastics problem and would like them to at least have the options that are microplastics free. That's another option. And another third option would be it's to be politically active because politics shapes a lot of different fields, and environment and sustainability just one of them. So of course you need to try to vote for those parties that have environment in their minds, that have uh, environment and our safety and our health as a priority. And yeah, I think, yeah, advocating for change as well, trying to support those who are leading, for example, in like climate problems or plastic problems, microplastics problems. Yeah, so I think nowadays we're quite lucky because we have all of these different options in how we can contribute. As long as we care, we can change it. Yeah.
Right. And are there any countries that are leading more the way in terms of policies, or right now it's about the same?
I think I could be quite biased because right now I'm based in European Union. That I think the European Union is leading right now on microplastics because, as I said, they have this huge set of regulations on microplastics that they're coming up with in the span of 15 years. When it comes to discharge, I also think they have this planned for the future 30 years. Of course, the timelines are not ideal, but at least it's something that we have right now. And yeah, I think European Union is leading, and after them comes like maybe New Zealand. I've heard they also have some set of rules regarding plastic production and plastic usage. Uh, yeah, US sometimes. Or maybe Koreans be not, but there's
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, I mean, without, of course, I mean, yeah, I know it's always an awkward question, but are there any brands in general, whether it is through food or cosmetics or whatnot, that are making a difference and really taking action to reducing plastic contamination in their products? You know, any companies that are making more of an effort than others or not really?
it's a tough question because yeah, as I said, microplastics is a young science, and I think have we still need to give some time to for brands to catch up and stuff like this. As a general rule of thumb, I would say that usually local brands, they uh, uh, when compared to like big chains and like big national brands, they usually these local brands, they usually have more sustainable and ethical mindset. Usually, not always, but usually. And that means they will try to use less plastic. Yeah, so less microplastics. As for these specific brands, I don't have anything in mind. One of the reasons that I'm using currently is Evolve Beauty.
Mhm.
It's a UK skincare brand. All of their formulas are microplastics free, and that's what I'm currently using right now.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, but I believe there are also other great brands out there. You just need to do some research. I know it's hype, but yeah, it's good.
Are there any websites? I mean, until we get the app that you are developing right now, which would be amazing. I mean, are there already currently any apps that do, I mean, any sites that do show, product by product, which brands have more or less or not, nothing yet?
Yeah, um, there's this website. It's not an app. It's Plastic Soup Foundation. Might
Okay.
heard you've heard of them?
I have heard of them. Yes, I actually never been to it yet. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. They have a website, and they have like this project and app with the microbit where they have a scanner, so you can scan your ingredients and it will tell if it has or doesn't have microplastics in the uh, ingredients list. And as well, there's the list of like those brands that have microplastics and those brands that those doesn't don't have microplastics in. Yeah.
Good. And what about biodegradable plastic? I mean, is it a safer alternative or is it really just the same thing?
Yeah, it's another difficult question because again, the terms are not um properly defined. So sometimes biodegradable, it's not what we think it is. And also it will need special conditions to degrade, and yeah, sometimes usual landfills are not the best option to go for this plastics, and then there's a lot of difficulties out there. But when it comes to even bioplastics, they will release microplastics, but uh much less amount that usual plastics. But it depends, I think, really depends. So
And right now, I mean, as it is still a very young and evolving um, subject to be researching, I mean, are there right at this moment any really exciting research happening that we should, if nothing else, at least follow to just keep an eye on, apart from what you're doing yourself?
uh um mm, I mean, there's this interesting research that is um, done right now in my research center. It's called Nano Inhale, and they're trying to see the amount of microplastics in lung tissues, but it's they're mainly considering the terrestrial animals, because we have lots of data on um, marine animals and how many microplastics they have. We have some data on humans as well, but we never studied the terrestrial animals, and that's what they're doing right now. The project is called Planet Hale, and it's interesting. But from others like around the world, I'm not very familiar, to be honest, so I cannot give much advice. Like one research that was already done, that is also very interesting. It's super new. It's about the microplastics affecting photosynthesis, how it hinders the photosynthesis of some plants, and how it can affect the yields, meaning the yield is going to be less, which is also a very concerning uh, fact. Yeah.
Yes, that is a very concerning fact indeed, because I mean that has to do with our crops, what we're eating, so that will make a big difference. And before we totally close, was just checking if anyone has any questions. Feel free to add comments. Um, I don't know if anyone else has any questions or not, or if we answered everything. Please do follow Dana, because on her Instagram she has been doing an amazing job in putting quite a bit of information. And it's important for all of us. It's really important for all of us to keep an eye and to take care of ourselves. And there's, as you said already, there's a lot of steps that we can take on a daily basis. So and just, as a last closing question, I mean, you yourself as a person and with everyone else here listening, I mean, are, what, what is the one thing, I guess, that we could right now do to really start avoiding this plastic consumption that we are dealing with, on a daily basis? I mean, you already talked about the three different major areas that we can do, but if there's one single change that everyone that is listening and everyone that will be listening in the future can do to make a difference for ourselves, but also for, their community, their own community.
Yeah, I would say it's staying positive because I know that microplastics, it's quite a depressing topic. Whenever you read about it, there's so much information and none of it is good. So it can be really easy to feel doomed and, yeah, to feel very anxious about microplastic and how it's everywhere. But it's very important to stay positive, because if you get into depression, there's not much you can do to solve the problem. And this problem, the most important thing, that this problem is solvable and we have time. And I talked with one guy. He has a startup about technology that is removing microplastics. Great guy. And what he told me, and I really tried to remember his words because it was really cool. He told us that we have this very rare historic moment when we can really prevent the huge um, problem from happening. I mean, of course, microplastic problem is already happening, but at least this time we have data beforehand, before microplastics already uh, started to I don't know, causing a very, very huge problem in our world. So I try to like memorize this because it's very, very, very beautiful because it's indeed like this. We have scientific capability and we have, like social media and stuff like this that can literally, um, you know, transport our news in the second. So yeah, it's really great that we're at this historic moment that we still have time and we still have um, some chance to make big changes and yeah, to prevent this huge problem from happening. So yeah.
Yes. One thing actually I was also thinking about, I was quickly checking also, someone is here loving this discussion, and it is important. It really is important that we have to talk more and more and more about these. But, one thing I was also thinking about, I mean, going back to babies, diapers, because diapers is something also that has a huge amount of plastic, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. That's a good one. It's just because I never had kids, so I never thought of it. And yeah, that's actually a very valid point. And I couldn't find anything about it. I don't think I read anything about this. But yeah, that's a very valid
We could take on that now. I'm sure, perhaps. But I mean, I do know that in plastic, I mean, plastic, a diaper, when you throw out the diaper, they're saying that it takes about 400 years to totally disintegrate. So I'm sure that there is a lot of plastic within the diaper.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is made of plastic, like you can feel it. It's
Exactly.
not like cotton or something like this. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a very valid point. And another valid point is something that I did read is was about the period products.
Yes.
Because pads they're usually also lined with synthetic, as well as tampons,
Yes.
and they can be like a huge source of microplastics that we like put into ourselves. But again, not very research topic because, you know, we always have problems with women's health not being researched enough. So
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I mean, the last person that said something, but I mean, I think you already answered. How can we be more sustainable in our daily life? And as you said, I mean, number one is, keeping your chin up and not, putting yourself down and make those small changes, whether it is in the kitchen, in the bathroom, with our products that we use, the clothing. Those are good ways of doing it. And as you also brought up, I mean, being very public, open, talking to the lawmakers so that they start making changes. I mean, that's the only way that we'll be able to see things changing, correct?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, this was I mean, I think that we could spend here hours and hours and hours talking about this because this is a not never ending subject and very new still. So I absolutely loved these moments. I'm sure that everyone that listened also absolutely loved it. Make sure to follow her Instagram, Dana's Instagram, because it's packed with information. Um, and by doing so, you are helping every single one of us to take better care of our health, because at the end of the day, that's what's important, is to really do what we can, person by person, so that we become more proactive with our own health.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.